Hi guys, how are you all today morning? Good morning. Today is today is 14th August 2023. My name is TSV Raghavan and I live in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India. This is my spiritual vlog on YouTube. Haribol TRSV Nectar NECTAR. The complete name of this vlog is Hardan 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 Haribol TRSV Nectar NECTAR Nectar. In this particular vlog, in all my previous videos, we have been discussing about the knowledge and information that we have gleaned till now through the study of spiritual books, scriptures, contemplation on the material universe, and meditation on the spiritual universe. This particular video in this vlog is no exception to that rule. In fact, it is a mere continuation of all that we have been doing in all my previous videos. Kindly subscribe to my vlog and press the bell icon so that I may keep reminding you of all my previous and future videos. So let us continue with the topic of discussion for today's video. For the past few videos, we have been discussing at length about the importance of a term called focus in the psyche and life of a human living entity. By now we know who is a human living entity. A human living entity comes into existence when a spirit spark ejects out of the spirit hole fire and begins to float in the ether aimlessly, knowingly or unknowingly, advertently or inadvertently. This spirit spark keeps floating in the ether for times immemorial till one day it gets attracted to this material world. When it gets attracted to this material world, the spirit spark gravitates towards it. When it comes in touch with this material world, it irritates the material world just like it irritates a shellfish when a foreign object advertently or inadvertently drops into its open mouth. When this spirit spark gets in touch with the material world, it becomes what is known as an unevolved or raw spirit soul. Just like the shellfish, to hide the irritation caused by the dropping of that foreign object into its open mouth, begins enveloping that particular foreign object with layers of its own saliva and ultimately makes that foreign object a pearl. Similarly, when the spirit soul comes in touch with the material world, this material world begins enveloping this spirit soul, this raw spirit soul, with four layers of material body, namely the first layer of causal intelligence and logic, the second layer of astral mind, feelings and emotions, the third layer of the five senses of ether, the etheric body of sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, and the fourth body, which is known as gross body, and which is made up of four elements, namely air, fire, water, and earth. These are four layers that envelop this raw spirit soul. When it does, a continuous, unending chain of birth and death in this material world comes into existence for that raw spirit soul. Thus, this spirit soul, which was hitherto free, once wrapped by these four layers of material body, begins its journey as a hapless passenger in a continuous cycle of birth and death in this material world. The gross body is the fourth layer which this spirit soul, as a newborn living entity, is identified with. Please remember that when the spirit soul is enveloped by these four layers of material body, it is known as a living entity henceforth. It is this living entity which gathers a continuous experience of karma during its endless cycle of birth and death in this material world. In other words, this raw spirit soul has to go through all this grind only to come out as an evolved spirit soul. This living entity, initially when the chain of birth and death begins, probably comes under the wrong notion that it has come into this material world to lord it over material nature. In that process, this living entity wastes several of its births and deaths just enjoying life in this material world. Of the 100% living entities who have come here to enjoy this cycle of birth and death in the material world, 75% of living entities at a time are under this illusion and a wrong impression that they have come here only to live a material and happy life. In that process, knowingly or unknowingly, they have to go through all the pains and pressures the living entity has to experience and enjoy as a living entity in one birth in this material world. That is, this living entity keeps on experiencing all these pains and pleasures through various births and deaths, in the process gaining something which is known as karma. This karma, also known as unworked and worked karma, is something that a living entity does during its lifetimes, which are innumerous in number. As for example, this living entity has had 10 births. In every birth, this living entity does some karma. Of the karma or the efforts put in by this living entity in this material world, say 75% are worked out in the same lifetime. 25% remain unworked. This 25% is kept in the storage in the superconscious memory of the same living entity as Sanchit Karma. As for example, if there are 25% unworked karma in every of the 10 births, that is 250% of unworked karma are stored in the Sanchit karma of the living entity's superconscious memory. Actually, it does not happen so. What happens is, when this first percentage of Sanchit karma comes into existence and the living entity dies in one particular birth, it takes a slice of that unworked Sanchit karma to base it as the cause and the reason for its birth in the next birth or lifetime. This slice of Sanchit karma, which is its previous unworked karma, is known as prarabdha karma. This prarabdha karma or slice of Sanchit karma, along with its free will karma of what is known as Kriyamana karma, is worked out by the same living entity in its next birth. However, by the time this lifetime ends, probably there is some work in progress of both prarabdha karma and its free will kriyamana karma that still remains as a residue. This residue is known as agami karma. This total residue is pasted into the previous already existing sanchit karma, which was stored in the superconscious memory of that particular living entity. In its next birth, this living entity will take a slice of the newly made Sanchit Karma to live it out and work it out in the next birth. This process goes on and on till finally the same living entity gets itself liberated from this chain of births and deaths and comes to its original self as a spirit soul, albeit as an experienced and evolved spirit soul. This is one process that happens to all of us individually. Here I told you about the 75% of humanity which is under the wrong impression that it has come here only to enjoy life. However, it is not so. Only the remaining 25% realize and accept that they have actually come here as spirit soul and as servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their sojourn in this material world is not only temporary but is meant only to carry out an assignment for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of these 25%, 20% still consider their assignment as a material one only. Only 5% are intelligent and evolved enough at a time to realize their spiritual self and existence. These people carry out spiritual assignments. Monks, saints, rishis, maharishis, devotees, godmen, demigods, celestial beings, ethereal beings, satta, etc., are those who live in different dimensions seeking God spiritually. We all must try to aim at that 5% of humanity which tries to become a spiritual servant of God. However, as we are discussing about this material world and human living entities who are realizing that they are servants of God, let us talk about the case history of some of them. We will come to the spiritual side later on, but for the time being, we will talk only about those who have come here to carry out a material assignment. Before going into it, let me remind you that when one living entity realizes its true purpose as a person who is going to carry out one material assignment for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is certainly not necessary that he or she must complete the assignment successfully and to the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It does not happen that way. Just like in an organization, there is a peon, then an intern, a trainee, a clerk, an employee, a supervisor, an executive, a manager, a middle level manager, a chief manager, a general manager, or a project manager, CEO, etc. There are various stages even in life for one living entity to carry out one material assignment. That means that if in one lifetime a living entity realizes his or her material assignment, he or she may only begin that journey in that lifetime. If he or she passes on in that lifetime without completing this project or this assignment, then he or she is given an opportunity to carry out his or her assignment through another birth. In that another birth, this person is born as a seeded player because he or she has already completed some of the work in his or her assignment already. From there, this person has to progress further. This keeps on and on till that living entity completes his or her assignment satisfactorily both for him and for the supreme to the satisfaction of the supreme personality of Godhead. This is a continuous cycle that happens to all those living entities who have realized their true identity as a servant of God and have taken up a material assignment. The term focus comes into existence only here. Focus is very important for every living entity who has taken up a material or a spiritual assignment for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Focus means complete concentration on completing that assignment. Just like money, electricity, genius, etc., the assignment is also a jealous mistress. It needs complete attention and devotion and surrender of that particular living entity towards it. He or she must fall completely in love with that particular assignment. He or she is not allowed any other distraction. This person must surrender to and fall in love with this assignment to such an extent that it slowly begins growing into this living entity and then finally becomes an extension of the same living entity. No living entity who has realized his or her actual status as a servant of God is allowed any private whims, fantasies, tastes, preferences, ideas, opinions, etc., which is different or alien to or against that assignment. Complete surrender by the living entity towards that assignment is a must to complete it successfully. This we must keep in mind while discussing about one case history which will vouch for and authenticate this fact in the case of a living entity in one lifetime. So let us begin here. There is a particular village, township, or city in the state of Andhra Pradesh in India. In one respectable middle class family in that particular township or city, one boy was born in April 1962 or 1963. This boy was christened as Ram Gopal because the surname of that family was Verma. Hence, this boy's full name became Ram Gopal Verma. Here, I would like to take a slight detour. There is a proverb called coming events cast their shadows before. It means that what is going to happen in future gives its hint in the present or the past too of the life of that particular living entity or the material world itself. If there has to be rain, first the clouds gather. If there has to be storm, the air becomes dusty. Such are some crude examples which will explain this proverb to a viewer positively. Whatever is going to happen in future has some signs shown to the same person even before, only to caution and make that person wiser. Same happened to Ram Gopal Verma. Now let us take this case history as one living entity. This Ram Gopal Verma was so only in this lifetime. It was a living human entity which had been going through the grind in several births. Probably it took an assignment in some previous birth and began striving towards achieving that particular assignments end successfully. In that process, in this birth, it was born as Ram Gopal Verma. Though this guy was born in a respectable middle class family where everyone was educated and going about his or her business, Ram Gopal Verma began showing germs of being attracted to the tinsel world of South Indian regional films right at the age of 8 or 10. Even then, as a school student, this boy became slightly renegade and mischievous, and it was common for him to bunk his classes and watch films in various theaters of that township at that age also. The parents were baffled and angry, but they could not do anything about it. This family was educated and erudite, and hence Ram Gopal Verma applied for and got a seat in one engineering college as an engineering student. However, thanks to his own destiny, he was least interested in engineering studies. He dropped out of the engineering course and started his own video parlor. Those days, video cassettes of feature films, both regional and Hindi and English, were in vogue. Ram Gopal Verma started his own video parlor where he indulged in his favorite pastime of watching films. Ram Gopal Verma, who probably had already had some experience in life in this line through several lifetimes, gained further experience and education by watching these films again and again continuously. This improved his knowledge about filmmaking manifold. When he was a young man, he began haunting the actual film industry, meeting up with various film personalities, both actors, stars, directors, filmmakers, and the like. After some time, this boy got an opportunity to assist some director in the direction of some movie. He was very young. He learned fast thanks to his own karma, his experience as a video parlor owner and as an assistant director. Ram Gopal Verma suddenly got noticed when he made one film as a director with a very big superstar as the hero. The name of this film was Udayam and it was a regional film. People were surprised to watch that even in his first film as a director, Ram Gopal Verma gave a super duper hit film which was dubbed in not only regional languages but also in Hindi. Ram Gopal Verma had arrived. After directing some films for foreign producers or other producers, Ram Gopal Verma started working on his dream to start his own production house. Because of his past experiences, his reputation, and his knowledge about filmmaking, he persisted on and perseverantly gained the goodwill of several regional film producers. Slowly, he started producing and directing films on his own. He started his own production house. After remaining in his own state of Andhra Pradesh for some time, he relocated to Bollywood, the capital of Hindi film industries in Bombay, Maharashtra, India. Here he started producing and directing several Hindi movies. Many of them, like Rangila, Company, Satya, Rakta Charitra, and other such films became not only blockbusters but were considered a milestone in film production both in Hindi and in regional films. Meantime, he also tried his hand in writing those scripts for other movies. He was already writing scripts for his own movie, but once he wrote one particular story which he gave to another superstar film producer and director called Mani Ratnam. Mani Ratnam took a story from the same Ram Gopal Verma and made it as a well-known film called Tirda Tirda. After successfully establishing himself as a producer, director, and filmmaker, Ram Gopal Verma, just like our previous video's case history hero Mahesh Bhatt, started an assembly line production of movies. His dream company of film production was dubbed as a factory for the production of movies. Ram Gopal Verma and his business house began making films right, left, and center, regardless of whether they were super hits, averages, flops, or otherwise. Not only this, he gave chance to such film artists as Urmila Matondkar and other heroes and heroines. He gave hit films to already established actors like Amir Khan, Jackie Shroff, Ajay Devgan, etc. He gave some of the top actors to the public who made a name for themselves as artists in the film industry. This included Urmila Markondkar, Manoj Vajpayee, Zakir Hussain, and the like. This shows how much one can achieve in his or her assignment. Probably during his course of carrying out this assignment, birth after birth, death after death, and uh, an exercise that stretched through several births. Ram Gopal Verma realized that he had to allow this assignment to become a part of him and to grow into him completely. He fell in love with his assignment 20,000%. He did not distract himself with anything else. He was now an extension of his own assignment, and thus it made him not only a national but also an international icon and living legend. Ram Gopal Verma has made several successful movies and proved to the world that a young man like him can achieve the impossible in this chosen field of his and his chosen assignment. His life story is an example for all those who are trying to become successful servants of God. Yes, they may take material assignments too, but once they realize how important it is to fall in love with their assignment, they are likely to succeed even faster than people like Mr. Ram Gopal Verma, Mr. Mahesh Bhatt, and others. Probably these people achieved this status only after two or three births. Others may, if they take a leaf out of the life story of these stalwarts, achieve their own assignment in one lifetime also. This is all I wanted to tell all of the viewers through this particular video. Please remember that we are not only eternal servants of God, but as individual living entities and spirit souls, we must seek first self realization of our true identity as a spirit soul, then try to get liberated from this endless cycle of birth and death, and finally, once we have reached that stage, pray to and meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be delivered to Him. Kindly let me know what you think of my talk on this particular subject and this case history. Please give me your own expert opinions, thoughts, ideas, and views so that I may blend everything together for the sake of this society. Before concluding, let me remind you that I am also a published author with Amazon Kindle and paperback. I write on spiritualism, fiction, and assorted subjects. Spiritualism happens to be my favorite subject. Till we meet in my next video, it is good morning from TSV Raghavan.